We're on now. Wow. I really did play an accordion one time. Is that too loud? Someone can turn it down if it is. And the story on jerry berries and potatoes is true, and it's still my favorite vegetable to this day. And all those other little facts, you really did your homework. And by the way, the person who introduced me in Malaysia had also done some pretty significant homework, and if the two of you got together, I would be so embarrassed. And the story on the square root of 2 is really true. Now, I don't think the square root of 2 is very pretty, but I do think Mary is very pretty, and she keeps going and keeps me humble. As you get older, people tend to say things like, "Oh, you're looking very well." Now, what they really mean is you're not dead yet. And so I have to interpret that just a little bit. I love the story about the 96-year-old gentleman who is being interviewed by a psychologist. And the psychologist said, "Did you have a happy childhood?" And he says, "So far, so good." Still having a happy childhood. But I don't compare it all to Jim Downing, who at this age is 103. And so this morning I received an email because I've been trying to set up an appointment with Jim. And the appointment is with my former boss in the Air Force, who was a retired 4-star general. His name is Ron Yates, a very fine gentleman. And I was with him at a briefing at the Air Force Academy about a month ago, and to 85 of my military friends, I keep track of all of them, by the way, and I have a list, and we pray about them, and we keep in touch with many of them who either work for me, or I work with them, or I work for them. And Ron Yates, General Yates, was one of the men that I worked for. So I sent him Jim Downing's book, After Days of Infamy, I think it's something like that. And when I saw him at the Air Force Academy here about a month ago, he said, "Jerry, Jim Downing is a serial proselytizer." Okay, you know what it means, a proselytizer. He says, "He's a serial proselytizer." I said, "I think you're right." And so I got to thinking about that. And so I wrote my former boss, General Yates, and I said, I now call him Ron. I said, "Ron, would you like to have breakfast with Jim Downing?" And he said, "Well, sure. I'll be glad to have breakfast," basically with a serial proselytizer. And so I've been trying to set that breakfast up, but Jim is too busy. And so I finally got it so that on May 10th, next week, that we'll have breakfast with Jim Downing. But he's too busy. He's got another appointment at 7:30 in the morning. So just before I came up here, and I was late, I apologize. My folks who play handball with me call me the late Jerry White. Because I'm usually running into the handball court right at the last minute. And so I'm now trying to set it up for May 11th. It should be an interesting breakfast. General Yates knew of my walk with Christ when he hired me. And so, but he told me, he says, "Jerry," he said, "I promised my wife Connie that when I retired, I'd go to church." So I said, "That sounds good." And he was laughing with me one day, about 3 or 4 years ago, I think. He said, "Well, Jerry, I finally got up one morning, said, 'Connie, this is the day. We're going to church.'" So they got up, went to the church. By the way, he lives in Colorado Springs, where I do. and came to the church, and on the door was, "No church today, church picnic over in the park." So they turned around and went home. He said, "I went to church." And he thought that would qualify. He laughed. He thought that was funny. I don't think he's gone since. And so over the years, I've asked him about the possibility of doing some Bible study. He's not, "I'm not ready yet." And I remember sitting at a dinner with him at a group called the Pikes Peak Round Table. I've never described that group to you. It's a group of about 150 businessmen and military leaders in Colorado Springs. Is this being recorded? I don't know whether it is or not. But the real name of the Pikes Peak Round Table is the International Order of Old Bastards. IOOB. Now, they don't call it that, except for those of us who've been around for a while. We still call it the IOOB. But I was at one of those dinners with him, and he said, "Well, Jerry, I'm a Christian, but I'm not the kind of Christian you are." I said, "Well, what kind of Christian are you?" And so he went on to describe it to me. Now, I tell you all of that just to say that it's never too late. It's never too late to share Christ with someone, whether they're your boss, your elder, your junior. One of the most amazing things that happened to me, he mentioned a book, Fundamentals of Astrodynamics. And that book is still in print. In fact, we're just doing a revision of it now. And it will be published sometime within the next hopefully next few weeks. We've been working on it for 2 years. And, the co-author to that book was my former boss by the name of Roger Bate. The book is Bate, Miller, and White. So the cadets call it the BMW, which I think is good. But I was sitting in a church, I was speaking in a church in Dallas a number of years ago. This old man came up to me and he said, "You remember me?" I said, "Well, sure I do." It was Roger Bate, who was at that time 83 years old. He said, "I want to talk to you about this discipleship business." And it just blew me away. And so he flew up to Colorado Springs on some business. And we spent a morning together talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he had received Christ at age 83. Isn't that something? And now, get this. I do not ever remember one time ever talking about spiritual things. I mean, when I came to work for him, he was so up there, and I was so young, just a young captain. But he's a smart man. He was, by the way, what's called a Rhodes Scholar, and he had gone to West Point. I mean, he was one of these guys that was an intellectual giant. And so I thought, I'll never have an opportunity to share with him. And yet, we did. And interesting, none of this is in my notes. You're going to have to pardon me. But I'm getting off track. But you can bear with me, okay? About a month ago again, I was sitting in a small meeting with a group of Air Force people in a group that I was vice chair of nationally, the Air Force Association. And here was this guy sitting across the table from me, and his hair was disheveled. He was just slumping in his chair, and he looked really, really old. And then all of a sudden he said, "You're white?" And he pulled out this book, Fundamentals of Astrodynamics. He says, "I was one of your students." And I thought he was old. I saw him a couple of weeks later, and he's dressed up a little bit. And we'll see him on a regular basis. But when I think about all the things God has privileged for me to do for a little kid from a divorced home, Mary and I are amazed. She comes from a little farm in the state of Minnesota in the United States. And when we see how God has blessed us, and the experiences he's allowed us to have, including coming to be with you many, 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 many times. You know, when they ask me how many times you've been in Singapore, I said, depends on how you count. You know, because I go through here a lot. And I said 50, 60, 70, I don't know how many times I've been in Singapore. But I always have valued coming here. I remember back in the days of Dave Dawson, coming here for perhaps the first time. But I've observed something about Singaporeans, and that is that they are hard workers. I mean, there must be something in the water here, because I really have never met a lazy Singaporean. I'm sure they exist, but it's just that I have not met them. And there's something here about the drive to succeed and the drive to excel. And then whenever I'm talking with people here or other people who are on the British system of education, and you've got your A levels and O levels and all that, I mean, when that is coming around, the parents, and I don't know whether you did this, don't do anything except help those kids get ready for those tests, because they want them to succeed. And so they push them to do well, because in the British system particularly, that determines your future. Is that true? You're learning. Now in the United States, we're not on that system, and people who are slow learners and so forth, you know, they don't really, they can kind of catch up later on. Even, what was it, at age, I don't know what you were when you retired, but you went to school later, right? How old were you when you started? I mean that in degree. 36 or 7. See, you can even do it in Singapore. So that's good. But, so this push to excel, and I would say that in all likelihood, many of you are driven people. And many of you have accomplished a great deal. Some of you who are younger are now at the beginning of your career wanting to accomplish things, and you are driven. And there's a focus and there is a drive. But as I look back on my own personal history, which Leslie reviewed, there's no question that I have been driven through the years. I mean, you don't do some of the things that I've been allowed to do without being driven, and also without being disciplined in some way. And occasionally, even to this day, at the end of a weekend, I might say to Mary, I said, gee, I didn't get anything accomplished this weekend. Now, there is something psychologically sick about that statement. Because you're not supposed, she said, wait a minute. You're not supposed to accomplish anything this weekend. You're supposed to rest and you're supposed to relax. But that's, again, something I have a very, very, very difficult time doing in my own life. So the question is this: why am I, or you, so driven? What is it? Is it wrong? Is it wrong to be thinking like that? Is it wrong to be driven? And what are the boundaries beyond which, in my drivenness, I hurt myself or I hurt my family? And the fact is, most of us tend to be achievers. We're people who want to accomplish things. Now, what about being driven spiritually? Is it okay to be driven spiritually and to accomplish spiritual things? To be driven and disciplined in the spiritual disciplines of life. And most of us say, no, that's okay. And so if you're NAM staff, I see people working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, but they think it's okay because they're in this, quote, Christian ministry. But they don't think it's okay if you work for IBM and work 60, 70, and 80 hours a week. I say, no, wait a minute. Are you sure about that? Are you sure that that is the right measure to things? Now, in the last few years, I've begun to be asked other questions that have caused me to stop and think a lot. And I'm still in the process of doing this, by the way. But the questions are these. When are you going to retire? And why don't you slow down? Even my handball buddies think I'm crazy. They say, well, Jerry, you don't have to make all those trips. Why is it you're going to be gone this and that? Everybody else is available for handball anytime I want to call them. But you're not. And so that question keeps coming up. And basically, underneath is this subtle thought, and sometimes not so subtle. Hey, you're old. Well, that's true. That's really true. And so you ought to slow down and take it easy, enjoy life. You've earned it. Well, I don't like the questions. Now, why don't I like the questions? And so I do a little psychological self-analysis. I say, maybe it's because I don't want to be perceived as old. But I can't change the fact. I mean, facts are facts. But, I still want to be thought of as a young person. After all, in most of my career, coming up, I was this young buck coming along, doing well, being recognized. And all of a sudden, I'm no longer that. I'm an old guy. And so there must be something there that I don't like about that. But maybe I'm just still too driven. And maybe I still have some of those drivenness habits. And also maybe I'm under the delusion that nothing has actually changed, when I know in my body it has. The fact is, I can't do what I used to do. And I still think, okay, I can still keep going hard and fast, which is so totally untrue. I can't do that. There's no question about it. I'm just getting in the handball court, and I understand that very quickly with some of the younger people that I've taught to play handball. So here's what it's caused me to think about a bit. And let's see, is this on? Yeah, it's on. And I want to start asking some questions. What is my purpose? Whatever age you are, 18, 25, 36, 72, no, that's my mathematics going to work. I just kept doubling those numbers. But the fact is that I still need to say, what is my purpose in life now? And has it changed in any way? And then I need to say, what is my calling? Has my calling changed? Now that I'm not leading the navigators, now that I don't have the responsibility for an area ministry of some sort or another, can I now do a different calling? Is it still the same? But this is the one that gets to me. Does God need me to accomplish his purpose? And the answer is a resounding no. God can do very well, thank you, without you and without me. Anybody who thinks in a secular company that you're expendable, just watch what happens the day after you retire. It's as though you weren't there at all. I mean, life goes on. But with God, it should be a little different, I think. But does God need me to accomplish his purposes? And so I said a resounding no, but I also want to say a resounding yes. Because he has chosen, in his infinite wisdom, to use people. To use you, to use me. And then that brings us to the final question. Who does God use? And does it matter? Now, when we die, life will go on. There's no question. People will move in behind us. But as long as we have life and breath, there is a purpose. Now, then I get to thinking, well, why can't I just be like a nominal Christian? Okay? Since God is going to do everything anyhow, and I start going off on the sovereignty of God, and that God doesn't need me to accomplish his purposes, so what's the difference between a nominal Christian who just, yes, knows the Lord, but just goes to church, pretty regularly and kind of indulges their lives and does whatever they want, never does evangelism, never does discipleship, hardly ever has a Bible study, rarely does any quiet time. But they're still a Christian. And the person who is deeply committed, who uses discipline to have that disciplined life, and they're strongly driven to serve God. So you say, why not, as it says in Ecclesiastes, eat, drink, and be merry? Rather than what Paul says in Philippians 3:14, I press toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me. How many of you are familiar with the name J.I. Packer? Okay, many of you have read some of his books. When I started doing some more thinking on this, because the question got asked to me in so many different ways, and I would give a flippant answer. And I said, I'm retiring. Well, I can only play handball 4 times a week, so what am I going to do with the rest of my time? Well, that's not a good answer. That's a flippant answer. This is a serious question. What will I do with my life? And so I started looking first at the concept of retirement, then the concept of purpose. And J.I. Packer wrote a little booklet. It's a very small booklet called Finishing Our Course with Joy. And here's what he says. He says that the secular world gives this advice for the old age. Retirees are admonished, both explicitly and implicitly, in terms of moral ethics. Relax, slow down, take it easy, amuse yourself, do only what you enjoy. You're not required to run things anymore, or to exercise any form of creativity, or to take responsibility for guiding and sustaining goal-oriented enterprises. You're off the treadmill and out of the rat race. Now at last, you're your own man or woman, and you can concentrate on having fun. You have your pension. Health services are there to look after your body. And clubs and trips and outings and tours and competitions, games and parties and entertainments are provided in abundance to help you pass the time. So go ahead. Practice self-indulgence up to the limit. Fill your life with novelties and hobbies, and anything and everything that will hold your interest. As far as society is concerned, you are now on the shelf. And you have only yourself, with or without your spouse, to please and look after. So concentrate on that. Live your life of retirement with enough health and strength for daily functioning as though it will go on forever. And he goes on. It's really a good read. And then he basically says, hogwash. That's like going down the wrong way on a road that's supposed to come the other way, and you're going to eventually crash. The reason most people, now I've got to be careful I say this, because there are illnesses and things that come at us in old age, but the reason many die within 2 years after retirement is that they no longer have a purpose. There's nothing that drives them. There's nothing that makes them get out of bed in the morning. But that's not the case only for people who are older. It's the case for us right now. What is it that causes us to get out of the bed in the morning and do something that is really worthwhile? By the way, I believe work is worthwhile. I see Doug Sherman's book here, Work Matters to God. Doug's one of the first guys I discipled at the Air Force Academy. And that's an excellent book. It's because your work does matter to God. So that brings us down to this idea of, on this side, drivenness, discipline, and devotion, and duty. Okay, 4 Ds. Drivenness, discipline, devotion, and duty. Contrasted with freedom, grace, rest, and resilience. Okay, if you just take those things, okay. Should I be driven, or should I live by grace and not be so driven? You can kind of meditate on that one a little bit. One of the passages that I think is very key to me in this is what the Lord says, but not the what. Let's read it together, okay? You need to wake up here, okay? Come on, say with me. This is what the Lord says, but not the wise boast of their wisdom, or the strong boast of their strength, or the rich boast of their riches, but let the one who boast about this, that they have understanding to know me, that I am the Lord, who exercises kindness, justice, and righteousness on earth. For these things I delight, saith the Lord. So, let not the wise man boast of his wisdom, or the strong man boast of his strength. That is what we want to live like. Now, when you're gifted, when you're driven, and when you're successful, there is that tendency to think, I did it. Don't you agree? I mean, you worked hard, you studied hard, you practiced, etc. And then you get confronted with a verse like this, or with 1 Corinthians 4:7, which makes it very clear, what do you have that you did not receive? And if you received it, why do you boast as though you had not received it? Everything we have is from God. There's no question about that. And so we are told that we can only boast of 2 things, that we understand and know Jesus. So some key issues, let me just see what I put up. I just want to come back to that. I wasn't going to use a PowerPoint, so I was sitting up in Cal and I decided I'm going to do it. And so this PowerPoint may or may not be at the highest professional quality. Okay, first of all, we need to know our gifts. We need to live by grace, and we need to surrender those gifts to God, but also we need to learn to practice Sabbath rest. Because drivenness and discipline can drive you to legalism and depression. Because you're never going to be good enough to please God. So let me just share, first of all, what the downside of drivenness is, okay? People who are driven tend to run over people, and believe me, I did it, especially in my earlier years. You know, it's either keep up or get out of the way. And I didn't do that purposely, it's just part of the way I was built. And very often, those who are driven are not given to reason. And it makes a physical toll on everybody else that is around you. Just ask Mary. She's had to live with it for a lot of years. And it tires her out at times. And by the way, it could have a wrong goal. Then I want to say the downside of discipline. You said, well, wait a minute. Is there a downside to discipline? After all, don't navigators teach you ought to have a disciplined life, you ought to do your scripture memory, you ought to have your quiet time, you ought to do Bible study, you ought to come to Bible study, you ought to be involved in community ministry. I'm sorry, but you should. But you and all that. But there are some downsides. And that is there is no flexibility. You miss a quiet time, you think you somehow failed God. Or you may impose your discipline on others, and it leads to an intolerance of people who aren't as disciplined as you. Now, if you're on the receiving end of that, you look at others who you perceive as being disciplined, it makes you feel bad. You say, I never did that. And you start comparing yourself. And it's also, you can have a wrong discipline. For instance, you can have disciplines where all you think about is your physical exercise and your eating habits or whatever it may be. And it can lead you to wrong kinds of disciplines. Then the other issue has to do with the place of personality. Everybody is different. Some people are just born, a certain way. We have one daughter who's hyperactive. When she was growing up, they called her the white tornado. Because, one day we come into the kitchen and well, how old was Karen? 9 months old, she was on top of the refrigerator. I mean, we just kind of, and so just the personality was there. Personality does make a difference. And it has to do with our background, it has to do with our culture, it has to do with the way God has made us. Each of us is different. Not one size does not fit all. And so when we think of the balance with grace, freedom, rest, and discipline, I'd like to just share a few things. And I won't go on a long time with this, but I want to share where I am in my process of thinking right now. Now, if you have me talk to you in a couple of weeks, maybe I'll work on this a little bit more. At least this is where it is for right now. And that is, first of all, cultivate an intimate walk with God. Now that, I did not put the word in there, a disciplined walk with God. Does that make sense? You see what I mean? But cultivate an intimate walk with God. That has to do with surrender of our lives. And that has to do with time in the Word and prayer. Psalm 139, 23 and 24 talks about search me, O God, know my heart. See if there be any wicked way in me and keep me in the way everlasting. The second thing is to cultivate a sane estimate of yourself. Not everybody is a super achiever. How many of you have children? Can I see your hands? Okay, now, how many of you had children that weren't quite as gifted as some of the other kids in their class or in the family? Can I see your hand? Okay, you have to walk with those kids. The one we just talked about, that I just referred to, had dyslexia. And she really had a hard time reading. And so we worked with her through the years. And going to college was extremely difficult for her. In fact, I went to the dean of the college and said, if she ever fails a test, a written test, would you please give her an oral exam? Because she just didn't function on the writing thing. But verbally, she was with it. And so that didn't happen. So we need a sane estimate of ourselves. Who are we? How has God made us? I don't know whether you use, how many of you taken strength finders? Have any of you taken strength finders? A few, yeah. And Taylor-Johnson temperament analysis, Myers-Briggs, there's all kinds of things. They're all just tools. They aren't totally definitive. They give you a hint as to what you're like. And they're good. But what it does is help you come to the knowledge of who you are. The third thing is have a profound understanding of where your gifts come from. They come from God. Gifts are not created within you. Skills are, but not gifts. We could talk about that difference. But if you realize that just because you're great at mathematics, that's a gift. It's just the way God made you. Or if you're not great, I've got a granddaughter now, and in fact, as we speak, I think she's taking her final exam in mathematics, and it is terrible. I mean, she goes to see the instructor every single day, and once she gets through this today or tomorrow, whatever it is, she is going to read slides of rate because she'll never take another math class in her life. But she's smart. She just doesn't get it in math. Neither is Mary, by the way. You got to ask her about geometry and a few little things like, no, you don't want to ask her about that. So your granddaughter inherited that in your ear. But I'm just kidding. Just have a profound understanding that God gave you whatever you have. And then admit your own failures and mistakes that you made. None of us are perfect. There is something about understanding our past and the dumb things we've done, and realizing it as part of being human. I'm not talking about sin. I'm talking about failures and mistakes. And then the thing that I think is ask God to teach you. Never stop learning. Because when you stop learning, then your brain just stops working. So yes, I did do the accordion, Leslie. I can't play it now, and you could have brought it out here and I could do a few chords. But at age 70, he said I'm getting to be about 80 now. At age 70, I decided I'm going to take up the cello. And so I'm doing that now, and it is hard. Now, of course, if I practice, it would help. But that's another little thing. Oh, I wish I'd have put it up here because about in February, third weekend of February, I had 4 commitments. Now, I am still working on trying to be in 2 places at once, but 4 was a little hard. I was supposed to be at a Navigator. I was supposed to be at a World Vision event in San Diego. I was supposed to go to the formal Air Force Ball at a big hotel in our city. And the 4th thing was we had tickets to see Yo-Yo Ma, who's the world's one of the best cellists in the world. We went to Yo-Yo Ma. I excused myself from the Navigator board meeting and 2 other things. And then we had someone gave us a ticket to our reception, and he came out. And so I, being my normal backward self, I elbowed my way to the front. And I have a picture of him. I'll be glad to show it to you on my iPhone. And we got to talking. He said, you need to read a book. And I said, what is it? And he says, it's a book called Never Too Late. And it was about a friend who had started playing the cello. Now, he was at the young age of 40 instead of 70. And so it was a really fun time. I'm very ginned up. I'm still trying to figure out how I can be Yo-Yo Ma. The next thing is to allow suffering to mold you. This is really important. Because you will suffer. And if you allow suffering to mold you and to develop you, in Psalm 119:67 it says, "Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have followed your word." So the suffering is an important part. Many of you know the suffering that Mary and I have gone through with our son who died. And it changed us. We're different people because of it. And then have a few people who speak truth into your life. And it's usually only a very few people. We have a group of 3 couples that I've spoken of when I've been here before called a covenant group. And those 3 couples are, we've been together now. We don't live in the same city, but we've been meeting together for 30 years. And they hold us accountable, hold our feet to the fire, and we theirs. So have a few people in your life. And by the way, speak truth in your life. Any of you recognize the name George Sanchez? How many do? Okay, George Sanchez was one of our early navigator leaders. And he'd been the international director when I became president of the Navigators. And one day he stopped me out outside my office, and he pointed at me and said, "Jerry, you don't listen." I said, "George, I do this." He says, "No, you don't listen." And he went on to confront me that I don't know whether it's the way my mind works or what it is, but instead of listening, I'd be moving straight ahead to something else and not listening and hearing people out. And really, really helped me. So I had to learn to listen. But do you have someone like that in your life that will actually confront you? When I came to be executive director of the Navigators, and just to work with Lawrence Stanning, I asked my covenant group, these 3 couples, I said, "What do you think?" And they said, "Well, Jerry, we think it's okay." They got together and talked. As long as you don't become president. Okay, got it. No danger, I said, because that was absolutely out of the question. Well, 2.5 years later, all of a sudden it dawned on me I might become president because my name was in the hat, so to speak. So I had to call them up, and I said, "Okay, folks, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, you said it's okay, but as long as you don't become president. Now, this is a possibility. What do you think?" So they got together and then took some time to talk about it and came back to me and said, "Well, Jerry, we've really seen some growth. We think it's okay to let your name go forward." Now, here's the big question. What if they had said no? Really, I'm serious. And I don't know the answer to that. They didn't say no. But would I have withdrawn my name? And I have thought about this, and I thought, well, what I would have to have done would have to go to our council who were doing the selection and saying, "Folks, here's what my closest friends say. That they see these weaknesses in me," and etc. So I'm just saying, have some people who speak truth into your life. And which leads to the point of guarding against ego and pride. Psalm 115:1 says, "Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to thy name be glory." So we should never take God's glory on ourselves. It'll hurt us deeply. And then finally, there's not finally, there's still 1 or 2 more items. Learn to rest. Really hard for me, I can tell you. Because when I rest, I kind of feel a little guilty. I think I should be doing something. But when I was 48 years old, I went into depression and hit burnout. And I had just run myself into the ground. And I had not learned to rest. There were many factors in it. One is I just thought, I'm doing this, I don't need God, thank you. Now, I wouldn't have said that at the time. So I had to start redoing my life in terms of how to relax. And then this covenant group, how many of you know who Eugene Peterson is? Okay, The Message. Eugene Peterson, in one of his books, has quite a discussion on the Sabbath. And he was speaking about this at one conference, and the 4 couples of us said, you know, we're pretty driven people. And we don't know much about the Sabbath. So we started, as a group, reading on it. And then we asked Eugene, could we come to Montana, where you live, for one of our covenant group meetings? And would you spend half a day with us, helping us think through this issue of Sabbath? And we did. It was very helpful. And I must say, it's one of the hardest things that I failed at, is the concept of a Sabbath rest. Now, you can't do it legally, but what I mean legalistically is what I mean. You've got it, but there has to be a time where you stop doing certain things and just spend time with God. Eugene says, help me, Mary, what's it? He says, we pray and play on the Sabbath, but not do that which we must do. And to this day, I have a difficult time with that. But I just want to say I'm working on it, because if you don't, you absolutely wear out. God somehow created us to need a Sabbath rest. And he talks about that a great deal in Hebrews. Okay. And then the last thing I want to share on this is to keep a continued personal study of the Scriptures. So today, when we get back on Sunday night, this coming week, we'll have a Bible study in our home with couples, and we prepare for that Bible study. So we just finished 1 Peter, and I've done 1 Peter several times, but every time I do it, I start over. I don't go back and get my old notes, and I say, okay, let me approach this right now like I'm studying. They may think that they want to be in this Bible study that I do. I need that Bible study because it keeps me studying. And preparing this message is not Bible study for me. It's figuring out how to communicate to you in a way that helps you, but it's not Bible study. It might be the result of Bible study. But now if I were doing expository teaching out of the Scriptures, that could qualify a little bit. So keep in the Word and help, just so that you know that you need to keep digging in the Scriptures for the rest of your life. Okay, I'm going to conclude. I don't know whether I'm supposed to have a Q&A or not, but let me just, I know I do have another slide. Okay, the concept of zeal is okay. You can be zealous. But in the midst of zeal, you have to have hope, peace, and purpose. And I'm not going to take time. I've taken enough of your time already. But just the idea of connecting zeal to hope, peace, and purpose. It'd be a great Bible study, by the way, for you to do. Zeal is remaining passionate about Christ, as the hope is that He'll carry you. And peace in what God is doing in your life, and purpose, what He still will do. Now, I'm going to conclude this now. There's no perfect balance. There is no cookbook solution to how to not be too driven or not be too lazy for this balance. But it is there. But under God's hand, we can be driven for the right reason. We can be disciplined mixed with grace. As long as we understand that the discipline does not earn us any good things with God. And we have freedom. We're not under the law. And we're commanded to rest so that you can be resilient. Remember I told you I went through that depression? I wasn't as deep as most people go, but it took me 2 months to recover. And it took me a full year to regain my confidence. Okay. And it was not fun. It humbled me because everybody knew, and in fact, George Sanchez again got into my life and helped me walk through that particular time. I was thinking this afternoon, so what illustration really relates to this whole idea of discipline and excellence that does pay off? And I thought of Captain Sully Sullenberger. Do any of you know who that is? Remember, he landed the plane in the Hudson River when he had bird strikes into his engine. And if you haven't seen the movie Sully, you need to see it. But the fact was that he had done that landing hundreds of times. Because every time he took off from that Boston airport, or that New York airport, LaGuardia, his constant thinking, what happens now if the engine quits? What happens now if the engine quits? And he knows where he is. And I'm not a very good pilot, but I do fly occasionally. And you're always figuring out what would happen if. But his excellence that he had learned in the disciplines early in life, earlier in his career, caused him to be able to respond at the right time. The second illustration comes out of my space background with Apollo 13. Apollo 13 was to be the third landing on the moon. And the 3 astronauts who were in it, on the second day of the mission, they were up and they were going around the backside of the moon, and they were coming back, and their whole oxygen tank blew up. And so without that oxygen, they were going to run out completely out of air to breathe. And the filter system had been destroyed. And so if you remember, how many of you have seen the movie Apollo 13? Okay. What they did, they had a crew on the ground to help them. Now they were totally helpless, but they had some phenomenal engineers on the ground. And they told those engineers everything they had in the space capsule. And so they got those actual items, cardboard, screw, whatever called, all kinds of little pieces. And he put those engineers in a room and says, figure out how they can create something to make a filter out of what they had. Now the guys out there didn't do it. I mean, they just weren't smart enough. They weren't engineers. They were pilots. And so they put that together and told them exactly what to do. Everybody needs a ground crew. You may be the hottest thing in the world flying as an astronaut, but if you don't have a ground crew to help you walk through life, then you're going to be in trouble. Because when you're in trouble, you need someone to say, okay, here's what you can do. And then you can be obedient and do it. I trust these are some thoughts for you. That through this, you'll see a way of being, having discipline and drivenness, but balancing it with grace and grace. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for your leading perfectly in our lives. Help us, Father, at whatever age, to walk with you and to keep growing. In Jesus' name, amen.